I grew up right here in Louisville, Kentucky. Well, we called it the Highlands. I'm not positive what people call it now, but it's the Highlands. Well, I went to Sacred Heart Academy all my life. I went to the model school from second grade through the eighth grade, and then I went to Sacred Heart Academy until I graduated in 49. And then I went to Ursuline College for a couple of years, and I finished my bachelor's degree at Creighton University. For good or for ill, I thought about it all my life, I guess. Attraction, resistance, whatever you want to call that. I was attracted to the sisters, to the way they were, the way they talked, and I really liked them. I had excellent teachers all the way through grade school and high school. And so I thought about that. But periodically, it was like, I don't want to even think about that. So I stopped thinking about it, but then it would come back. I was attracted to the sisters because they were obviously good, and they were doing something good. So that attracted me and made me look at them more carefully. But then it was always, so who wants to do that? And besides that, I don't even like children. So why do I think I want to be a school teacher? That was the one that always stopped me, because I did not like, to be perfectly honest, I never liked teaching. But the Ursulines were teachers. I was attracted to them as people. Somehow there was something about them that always attracted me, and that never went away. I tried to get rid of it because my mother was totally opposed. And so any chance she had, she, made some remark about not doing this. She didn't want me to go to the community. My mother was a very intuitive person. She read me like a book. So I knew she knew that I wanted to go to the community, and she didn't want me to. So there you were. What was I to do? So I look back on it, I would guess I kind of tippy-toed around her, not talking about it. But I had to talk to somebody about this nagging thing that I had. So I talked a little bit to my own sister, who never really gave me an opinion. But I knew she would support me in whatever I decided I wanted to do. Then there were some sisters who were appropriately supportive. Some of them who were out to get me because I was the first girl from Sacred Heart Academy who had shown interest in the community since, I can't remember the sister ahead of me, 10, 15 years older than I. And so it was like they really wanted me to come to the community. Partly, I think, because no one had entered the community from Sacred Heart Academy for quite a while. So I was kind of caught, listened to one side of it and then the other side of it, and threw up my hands and said, I'm going to get married. So that's how I dealt with it for a while. I had it was not a love affair. I was in love with a guy who was fresh out of the seminary, and my mother felt sorry for him because he didn't know anybody. And she said to me around Christmas time, "Why don't you give a Christmas party and then invite him?" So I did, and we had a really nice party in the house, and I got to know him, and so we started dating. And we dated from Christmas until I entered the community. So it was during that period that I was struggling within myself to know what I really wanted to do. I really wanted to love God. When I think back on it, it's like I did not want to teach, but I wanted to be, I don't know the word, holy, I guess. I was attracted to the life, to the religious life. I did not make a retreat. I did not have a spiritual director. I didn't have a regular confessor. None of the above. But those desires to know God, it was a thirst for God that led me, because I did not want to be a teacher. And so I had a battle with that one. And all that time, it was a pull to religious life that I could not deny. So as the school year went on, if you're going to the convent, you got to start getting ready. So I started getting ready. My mother kind of absolutely resigned herself to this, but it was not what she wanted for me. In fact, my dad said rather openly, "I don't want you to do this, but if you really want to, and that's what you're convinced God wants of you, then I will support you through the whole thing." So that's the way it turned out. And so one of the sisters helped me, and we got the list of things I would have to have. And the scary part, I look back on it now, and it just strikes me as funny. You have to get the clothes together. And that part was fun and funny. And so I got my clothes ready. The underwear was particularly a motive of hilarity, but I did that for like a uniform. And I used to put mine on and parade for my sister. We had some good laughs about it, but inevitably it kept moving, and that's the way I was going my senior year. So then when I look back at it, I don't know how fair I was to this young man, except the first time we dated, I told him what I was going to do. And periodically I would tell him, "Remember, I am going to be a nun. I'm going to the convent." And he would say yes. He knew that. Then I knew there were times when he would say, "I'll change your mind." So there was that, no smooth sailing for me on any area, except the desire I had to know God better, to love God better, to do what God wanted me to do. I didn't know what it was, but I figured it was not a lot of the other things I saw in the world. But we kept on moving, and I got my clothing list and all that paraphernalia, had that all ready, and went to see Mother Superior, which when I look back on it, that too was a hoot. That didn't do anything for me anyway. Most of my high school friends knew what I wanted to do, and the young man realized that I was not going to change my mind because of him. So we went through the whole thing, through the getting ready and collecting whatever. As a parting gift, he gave me a thimble with his initials and my initials carved in it. When I went to the novitiate, I had to give that up because it was like this was a tie. If I didn't break that tie now, maybe I wouldn't break it. So I gave up the thimble and went to the convent. So once in a while, I think about that first night in the convent. It was like, phew, I did it. Now what? Let's just get on with life. What do I have to do now? Because I did it. The first night sleeping was an interesting experience, and I recall it every once in a while. It was a very peaceful night, and I slept well. Then the daily stuff began. Getting up early, which was not much of a challenge, but doing the things that the sisters did, the young women who were becoming sisters. We all did the same thing. Well, we always did the same thing at the same time, and we were kind of lock stock. When it really began to dawn on me what I had done, had joined the convent, I did it. It's the first really independent decision that I ever made, because I knew my parents did not want me to do this. I can't say they disapproved, because who could disapprove of going to the convent, for heaven's sakes? But they were not pleased with this. But they allowed me to do this. And my friends, my good friends already knew I wanted to do this, so they made no objection. So I went to a couple of my classmates. I went to one wedding. My best friend got married, and I went to her wedding. It was really an interesting experience. Going through the first part of the preparation was what we call the postulancy. And in that part, you're just kind of learning the ropes, so to speak. And that was very good. I didn't mind it. It didn't touch me below the chin. It was no commitment. When I look back on it, it probably should not have been, but it was a learning situation. When I look back on it and I ask myself, when did I really get serious about this? I think it's when I was a postulant, a novice even, when I realized we're getting serious here, and we're talking about God, and we're talking about a love relationship with God, because I wanted to love God more than anything, more than anyone, anything. I didn't want anything to stand in my way of loving God. That part was easy until I got to the part of, what about teaching? You are going to have to teach. And that was the last thing I wanted to do, partly because I didn't like children. Isn't that terrible? I didn't want to teach children. I didn't think I could. I didn't think I would be very good at it. But life gets started, and so I was going down that path, and I did my student teaching, and the sister who was in charge of, I guess you would call it, that program, had told me, Martha, you were born to be a teacher. You're cut out for this. I've always known you're going to be a teacher. Well, that sounded pretty scary to me because I didn't see it. But I went on with that. I did very well in my studies because I'm fairly smart. And so I had won a scholarship to college. And so I went to college. And then I figured I'll probably major in education because that's what everybody was doing. So I just kind of went along with a group. But I had sisters, friends, who knew me better than some others, and so I don't know how they did it. I think they must have twisted the Mother Superior's arm because I was not going to major in education. They said, that's not where you belong. You belong in English. Well, that was songs to my ears. That's exactly what I wanted to do. So I figured I would go to Ursuline College and major in English and then teach English. That was not what happened at all. I majored in English, and at the end of my senior year in English, they changed the course of my life, and I went to Creighton University to major in English. It's either, by that time, nobody was talking about teaching English or anything. It was like, you will get your degree in English and then continue with your education. Basically, that's what happened. This is a confession I don't make easily, but basically, I never liked teaching. There were certain things about the whole thing that I really liked. Number one, I really liked the girls, the students. I taught little kids, and I was no good at that. I knew that. I tried to tell them from the very beginning, I'm not going to be a very good elementary school teacher. I just don't have it with children. So that was not addressed directly at the beginning. By the time we got to summertime, it was clear I was not going to teach in the elementary schools. I was going to do something else, but I didn't know what. So there was always the possibility of going on for further studies or what else. But I was generally really enjoying learning. There was so much that I could read and do and learn and write about. And I got to continue going to Creighton after I graduated. And then I was transferred to Pittsburgh. And everything changed. I was still going to teach English. But my first obedience was to teach fourth grade at St. Leo's and play the organ, for God's sake, at the church. Now, play the organ. I mean, people said, you'll have the grace because God gives it to you in your obedience. I never did buy that. I could not play the organ. I didn't know how. I don't know how to play the organ. But I went to St. Leo's and played the organ and had the choir. I did not go to the Catholic school. I was Catholic. I didn't go to the grade schools. I went to the model school. And so we did not have the same setup. I had never met a pastor. I did not know that pastors ran the show. I thought the principal did, but that's not true. So I made it through the first part and thought, this can't get any worse, because I did not understand parish life. I didn't belong to a parish. I went to the model school. And while I belonged to St. Agnes Parish, I was never inside it. It was like I didn't understand how it was put together or why they did it this way and who the priests thought they were and all that rigmarole. And this was before Vatican Council. And there I met another whole side of life that I didn't know anything about. Here were these beautiful young girls. I really liked them. And maybe that's what kept me there, because I liked them so much. They were so fresh and so real. This is when I met the Jean Ann's family, especially her one sister. And so I got to know them and found out that I really liked teenagers, and especially the girls at Ursuline Academy. These were the real kids I met and really, truly liked. And they liked me. So we had a wonderful couple years there when I taught at UA. And then I got another obedience that took me this time to Virginia. That one about killed me, because I had never met teenage boys. I mean, I dated, but these kids were something else. They were like, I didn't think I was going to make it through it. I was halfway afraid of these guys, for one thing. They were bigger than I was. They were like seniors in high school. I didn't know how to talk to them. I gave all that up when I came to the convent. So what was I to do? So I muffed through it. The kids thought I was a great teacher, and they really thought I was a great gift of God to them because I was young. The other sisters were not young. So here I was, fresh blood, and they liked me, and I directed the play and started the yearbook, and they really liked that, and I liked that too. So we did that together. Yeah, that's when I started teaching high school. But I didn't stay in West Virginia but that half a year. And from there, I got changed in the middle of the school year because I simply could not handle these boys. I got changed to back to Louisville, to Ursuline Academy, Louisville. I think that's when I really got into teaching and liking to teach young minds who were as willing to learn as I was to teach. Those girls at Pittsburgh were wonderful, but when I went back to Ursuline Academy in Louisville, it was like, wow, this is what it's really like. So I did plays and all this other extracurricular activities that English teachers get loaded down with. And I loved it. I ate it up. This is what I was meant for. Then I went to Sacred Heart. And that was an interesting experience because I was a Sacred Heart graduate. But it had changed from the time that I was at Sacred Heart, graduated from Sacred Heart, and went there to teach. When I left Sacred Heart to go to Pittsburgh, it was like, this is great. This is another great school, and I'm going to like these kids. Well, then I found out, there were some insights I got about teaching and education, and I started looking at things with more mature eyes, I think. When I went there to school, it was a very good school. And it was student-centered. It's really good. But when I went there to teach, it was like, this is foreign territory. What is this? So it was like, I was not going to stay in this. And so what happened is I got transferred to UA Pittsburgh. This was the beginning of Vatican Council II, and I happened to be on the religion council or something. And so I got to go to all these meetings and learning about Vatican Council and reading all the documents and getting turned on to a whole different side of life. I thought I was a good person to start with, but this was a whole new invitation. Like, this is really God, and I'm really going to find out what I want to do. And that's what happened. I went to Pittsburgh. Went back to Sacred Heart and took part in everything that talked about Vatican Council. So, like many sisters, I think we had like a real conversion, an adult conversion to loving God and the church seriously. That was really exciting time to be alive, especially, how can I say it, if you weren't afraid to change. There were possibilities and different things to learn and different ways of learning. And it was all open. It's for you to take. So that's what I did. And then I had the opportunity. I started making retreats. We no longer had to make them all at the mother house at the same time. So people were choosing to make retreats, different kinds of retreats. In fact, we gave some of them. I made a directed retreat. That's what did it. I made my first directed retreat. I had heard of it, and I had read some things about them, but I had never done it, and I didn't know anybody who did. And then I realized I was directing the Office of Ursuline Life, which was like continuing education. So I thought, if I'm going to learn about this, I have to do it. I should experience a directed retreat. That was the real change in my life. Then I came to know God, for sure. I don't know how to explain the way it opened up, but the community was ready for that too. And there were sisters who came to make directed retreats. And so people needed to be directed. How are you going to do this? Well, you have to learn how to do it. So I went back to school at Ford, Ohio, and took a summer on the spiritual exercises. The rest is history. Saying to Sister Adelaide, who is the president, I don't know how to be the DeMovis director. I don't have a clue how you go about doing that. And she said, Sister, you'll learn. Did I ever? So I did learn. I learned about spiritual direction and how essential it was to learn about God and to form a personal relationship with God. know how that's what really began another part of my life, because I really liked being a spiritual director, and we were pretty scarce in those days, so you got a job fairly easily because not many people were giving spiritual direction or knowing the spiritual exercises. I know 75 is when I've worked at Milford. Yeah, that's when I worked there for the first time. But here I was doing spiritual direction, giving directed retreats, and being novice director. That was a load when you stop to think of it. But who else was going to do it? Nobody else was doing things like that. Well, the Earthlands of McMillan Street invited me to come. See, their novices were in the same program that our novices were in. So they asked me to give a series of talks on Angeline spirituality. So we were first beginning to understand that. And so this was a marvelous grace that I received, because those sisters asked me to come and give talks about St. Angela. Well, this was right at the time of Ludochowska's book and other contemporary writers who learned about Angela. So I was eating that up, like, suck it in like an orange. Like, oh, this is wonderful. I'm learning about St. Angela. And it was like, I was making retreat one time and it felt like she walked in the room. I got to know her. Here she is. Well, so my enthusiasm kind of carried me away, and I just got really excited about her. Still am. And it kind of grew from there. So I started being invited by Ursuline communities. You know, we're a very large family. And all of this was happening to all of us about the same time. We were learning about St. Angela. We were learning about God. We were learning about Angeline history. It all kind of came together. So I started giving retreats about St. Angela. And I got invited everywhere. It was like, I couldn't believe it, because people were thirsty, hungry to know more about Angela, just like they get today, I think. But to find out she was real, a real person who loved God and loved her neighbors and did what she could. She was not a school teacher. I mean, there weren't any schools, for heaven's sakes. She never taught school. She never wore a habit. She never had to make vows, none of that. She was there to love God. And that was so attractive to her, and because of her, to so many other people, especially women. The more I learned, the more I liked her, and the more I grew passionate about the way she loved God and the way she loved people, and how she loved to serve people, not in any particular way, but as they needed. So she came along to fill the needs, and there was a need for education of whatever kind you want to call it. So I have to say, this is funny. I mean, I think it's funny. I kept saying, because it was giving all these talks, and when I finally got to writing some of the things down, I said, I've got enough material here to write a book. And Rosella, God bless her, she's the one who did it. Either stop talking about writing a book or write the damn thing. So I did. And that was the beginning of the sport of my life. So I'm writing because Rosella believed that I could. That's how it started. I have written and published 4 books. I got into writing little pieces like Angela and Death or Angela and whatever. And some of those became little publications. Well, I had been in formation all that time. You know, not formally, but I was being formed. Ongoing formation. And I learned that one doesn't just grow to a certain point and then stop, but God's love opened up and opened up. And I found that so attractive. And I found people attracted to God. Well, that feeds your desire, doesn't it? I mean, I love doing what I was doing. In fact, I still do. And I still love to be with people as their lives. It's uncanny to watch how God works. In a way, it's always the same. He lets people know how good he is, how good they are, and like how there's a connection, a drawing together. I think that's why Ursulines have lived all this time, because we're not doing anything. We're following the call for the here and now. And it has led us all over the world. It's not finished, because not everybody knows God yet. That's how I know what the charism is. It's this love for God that has to be said or acted out or told in some way or another, that has to be said. And that's how I got in. That's how I got into it. It's like, this is such good stuff. You got to know this. And it is good. Still life-giving. Maybe more life-giving than a lot of other things. When I watched the church struggle to renew itself, it's all the same thing. You get back to finding out that God loves you, and you can love God, and it's real. That's all it is. And people come to experience that, then there's no stopping them. It's like God comes to know you where you are, and then it's thereon. You come to know how good God is. And then if you're able, because sometimes it's very painful, to say, I am good, I am loved by God, I can tell people of how good God is. I can do that. So that's what keeps a lot of people pushed. I really loved George Murray. She was my 8th grade teacher. I just worshipped her, really, really did. And when she was turned 100, she was at Marion, I think. And I went over to visit her, and I knelt down next to her wheelchair. And she took my hand and she said, Martha, it's all about love. And you see, that's the answer. It is. It's all about love. That's all there is love. But that's really hard to believe down to your toenails that God loves you as you are. I have to do this and this and this. I got to clean up my act here. I got to do this. It's all about love. Doesn't matter what you do. Let's talk about preaching to the choir. Doesn't matter so much what you do, but it's how you love. Now, I don't know if people realize that about Angela. I would like them to know how much God loves them personally. But you have to be open to that to believe it. It's a call to holiness. It's that simple. That's what holiness is. That's what holiness is. Accepting God's love and returning it